So, guys, just a few days ago, we talked about how ESPN gave the Cowboys a C grade for the offseason, and we all agreed that it felt like they were seriously underestimating this team. Well, it looks like they're not done yet. ESPN has now released another major ranking, and once again, the Cowboys have been placed much lower than a lot of fans expected. And honestly, after looking at this roster, it's hard not to question how they came up with this list. Let me break down exactly where ESPN ranked the Cowboys, what their reasoning was, and whether this ranking actually makes sense or if this is just another case of Dallas being overlooked by the national media. What's up, Cowboys Nation? Welcome to the NFL Playbook Cowboys. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Before we get into Dallas specifically, it's worth mentioning where the two biggest threats outside the division landed. The Los Angeles Rams were tagged as having the best starting lineup in football, built around Matthew Stafford and an edge rusher who might be the best in the league right now. Stafford is coming off a season where he led the NFL in passing yards and touchdown passes, and the roster around him is loaded at nearly every position. The Seattle Seahawks, the defending champs, were praised for an interior defensive line that held opponents to the lowest scoring average in football last season. That's the standard other teams are chasing right now, and both of those rosters were built to make another deep run. Those are the two teams keeping my attention outside our own division. Now let's talk about the division itself, because that's where things actually get interesting for us. The Philadelphia Eagles landed at number 2 overall in this ranking. ESPN pointed to their offensive tackle duo as the top strength in the entire league, calling it one of the best pairs in football, and safety as their clear weakness after losing a starter to Houston in free agency. I'll be honest, I'm not as worried about the Eagles this year as some people is. There are real questions about Saquon Barkley and how much longer he can hold up at this level after last season's workload, and their receiver room outside of Devonta Smith is thinner than people want to admit right now. Then the New York Giants came in at number 23, still trying to figure out their identity after trading a franchise cornerstone on the defensive line. Their edge rush remains dangerous on paper, but the interior of that defensive front is a real question mark heading into camp. And the Washington Commanders sat at 21, with their entire season description built around one name, Jaden Daniels. Their strength is the quarterback, their weakness is the secondary. So that's basically the whole story of that roster right now heading into the year. Now let's get to the Dallas Cowboys, because this is where it gets frustrating. ESPN has the Cowboys ranked as the 14th best roster in football heading into the season. 14th. Let me say that again for the people in the back. 14th. And before you accept that number, I need you to actually sit down and look at this offensive personnel group, because on paper, this does not look like a middle-of-the-pack roster to me. Dak Prescott is a quarterback for the Cowboys, Javonte Williams in the backfield, CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens on the outside, Jake Ferguson at tight end with Michael Trigg right behind him pushing hard for snaps. Up front, you've got Tyler Smith, Tyler Guyton, Cooper Beebe, and Terrence Steele protecting the quarterback. That is a heavy, heavy group, and that's before you even mention the depth pieces waiting in the wings behind all of them. That looks like a high-powered offense to me, not a 14th ranked unit sitting in the middle of the league. Now flip over to the defense, because this is where things start to get interesting. Kenny Clark in the middle. Rashawn Gary off the edge, somebody who I think is still criminally underrated around the league. LT Overton is trying to become one of the best in the business if he can stay on the field for a full season. DeMarvion Overshown emerging as one of the better linebackers in this league, not just on this roster. Deron Bland, and we'll see if he's back to his old self this year after battling injuries. Kobe Durant, Siobhan Revel, Jalen Thompson, Caleb Downs, and Malik Hooker rounding out the secondary. So, I'll say it plainly, that might be one of the best safety rooms in the entire NFL right now, if not top 5 outright. Last year, everybody was talking about the receiver room. This year, it might genuinely be the safeties carrying the conversation, and that's a real shift for this defense. And we haven't even touched the rookies yet. Caleb Downs, Malachi Lawrence, Jayshon Barham, Devin Moore, LT Overton, all as the first-year contributors. These aren't project players sitting on the practice squad hoping to make the final roster. These are guys who are going to see real snaps this season, guys the coaching staff is already counting on heading into camp. When you add all of that together, offense, defense, and the young talent mixed throughout, calling this the 14th best roster in the league starts to feel like a stretch. And I think a lot of Cowboys fans are feeling exactly that same way right now. ESPN listed wide receiver as the biggest strength for Dallas, and I get the logic, but I don't fully agree with it. This is a room that helped Dallas lead the entire NFL in passing last season. That's not a small accomplishment, that's the whole league. CeeDee Lamb has put up 1,000+ receiving yards in 5 straight seasons despite missing time in 2 of those years, which tells you everything about how consistent he's been even when banged up. He's a top 5 guy in receptions and receiving yards, full stop, no debate needed there. George Pickens came off a breakout first year in Dallas, where he finished no lower than 7th among all receivers in catches, yardage, touchdowns, and yards per target. That's not just a good season. That's a complete season across every major category. That's an elite 1-2 punch by any measure you want to use. Punch by any measure you want to use. But if you ask me, the actual biggest strength on this team isn't the receiver room, it's the quarterback. You've got an 11-year veteran who has seen everything this league can possibly throw at him. As long as Dak Prescott stays healthy, this team can absorb almost anything else that goes wrong around him. He's the stabilizer. He's the guy who keeps this whole operation from wobbling when adversity hits, and adversity always hits at some point over a 17-game season. Every team goes through a stretch where nothing is clicking, and having a quarterback who's already been through those stretches before matters more than people give him credit for. Then, ESPN's listed weakness for Dallas is cornerback, and that one I actually agree with. It's fair. This defense finished last in the league in defensive efficiency last season, allowed a passer rating in the high 50s against opposing quarterbacks, and only managed a handful of interceptions all year. That's rough by any standard you measure it against. Darren Bland battled injuries, but remains the clear leader of that room when healthy. Kobe Durant and a returning depth piece were brought in this offseason specifically to compete for that outside spot, and Shavon Revel is expected to take a real step forward in year 2 now that he's further removed from injury. 4th-round rookie Devin Moore is also in that mix fighting for reps, and I wouldn't be shocked if he forces his way into playing time by mid-season. And the X factor, according to the report, is Caleb Downs, and I completely agree with that one too. If this defense is going to take a real leap forward, it's most likely coming from him. If Caleb Downs can turn this group into even a league's average defense, and I mean simply average, this offense is talented enough on its own to make this team a real problem for everybody else in the conference. That's not asking for a top 5 defense. That's just asking for average, and this roster genuinely has the pieces to get there. So, honestly, I'm not as upset about the 14th ranking as some fans out there seem to be. Think about what that ranking is actually telling you. If ESPN believes this roster is a top 14 roster in the entire league, and this defense was historically one of the worst units in football last year, then simple math says that defense has nowhere to go but up from here. If the overall roster grade is that high despite last year's defensive numbers dragging it down, that's actually a signal that people around the league expect real improvement on that side of the ball this season. That's not disrespect. That's practically a compliment hidden inside the number people are choosing to be upset about. And that's before a single snap has even been taken in Oxnard. Training camp hasn't started yet. This entire ranking is purely a projection based on paper, based on names and depth charts, not actual football being played on the field. Rankings like this get revisited constantly once pads start popping and roster battles actually start playing out in real time. 3 teams that landed right around this exact spot in past seasons went on to reach their conference championship game that same year, so maybe 14 isn't the insult some people are making it out to be. Maybe it's actually proof that this roster is quietly good enough to make real noise once the games start counting for real. Now, ESPN hasn't finished there either. They also dropped a separate running back ranking, and that one is worth digging into on its own. I'll do this in the next video. If you enjoyed this one, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next video, and drop your own thoughts down in the comments. Do you think 14 is a fair number for this roster, or is Dallas still getting overlooked by the national media the same way they always do? Let me know what you think, and I'll catch you in the next one.